Today, according to my sources, is July the 30th. In case you're not aware, 396 years ago, an earthquake of level 10 on the Mercalli scale killed 5,000 people in Gargano, Italy. So congrats to the earthquake, although to be fair, the performance was quite middling. I think it logged like a 60th percentile on the meters. It wasn't even in the top 10 of the most deadly earthquakes in Italy, so it definitely could have done better. Now today we have an informational video, much like this intro, which is about why. Why do we put more importance on DPS and in general on DPS players than something like healing? This is for players who might not understand or might not take this point at heart, believing that, DPS players are zug subhumans, only caring about damage, ignoring mechanics and whatever else, because it makes them feel good to see themselves on the meters, whereas healing should be just as important. Now, there is a reason, right? There is a reason why even the better players, even the more competitive groups, whether it is Mythic Plus or whether it is the raid, put more importance in doing damage. You can, for example, look at logs. These are, for example, Mythic Plus keys, the rankings of specs in Mythic Plus keys. If you filter these rankings for just healers, for example, you will see that, okay, fine, besides the pink swarm of stuff that you see in here, you will see that many of them will have one particular trinket, which is this little circle right here called the Beacon of the Beyond, which is something that is used to do damage, for example, in Mythic Plus, even if you're a healer. You might know, for example, that for quite a lot of time, doing tons of damage was one of the prerequisites of a healer to be meta in Mythic Plus. We have seen this with things like Resto Shaman, with their Kyrian totems, for example, back in Shadowlands. We have seen this nowadays with Holy Paladin. We saw it back in Shadowlands with Holy Paladin when they had Ashen Hallow. We saw it with Kyrian Holy Priests in Shadowlands as well. Before that, in BFA, we used to see it with Resto Druids doing the most damage. So that was always a quite important part of a Mythic Plus key, because, Mythic Plus is timed, therefore you want to try to do things and kill things as fast as possible. But this is also true in the raid. What you might have heard of in the raid is this other thing. When it is time to give out loot, healers don't get loot. When it is time to give out powerful trinkets, like for example what some healers have here now, like the Ominous Chromatic Essence or the Screaming Black Dragon Scale, healers don't get those trinkets early on. When it's time to, for example, choose who gains the most from a tier set, from a tier piece, a lot of importance is put on which DPS is gaining the most percentage of damage. You have, plenty of nerd talk about, for example, DPS increase based on your tier pieces. You have sims for all the specs, then you have the differences in power increase based on the amount of 2 pieces and 4 pieces that you have. You then cross-reference it with power infusion. You can even cross-reference it for power infusion every couple of minutes, power infusion for just a 40-second opener of damage, or even something like Wind Fury totem buffs. All of this just for DPS. Where's the healer? Nobody cares about the healer. Why is there so much more importance on the damage compared to the healing? To someone who hasn't really put that much attention into this, it might seem counterintuitive. If you are in a raid or in a Mythic Plus key, you have to be able to heal. You have to be able to have the power, the strength to heal enough, to keep the party alive, or the raid, more importantly, alive. When you look at, for example, bosses like here with the damage taken, for example, you have bosses like Sarkareth, bosses like Echo and Magmorax having a lot of damage taken per second, requiring a lot of healing from your roster. So it feels like you should put importance on your healers being able to keep up with high damage bosses, as much as the DPS players being able to do enough damage. However, the reality, the way the top players are operating, and therefore many others lower down try to copy and try to operate the same way, is that doing damage is obviously more important than doing healing. The simple logic behind this is that doing damage has no ceiling. It has no cap. You can do as much damage as you can to try to kill the boss as fast as possible. The faster you kill the boss, the better. There is generally no drawback, in case you didn't know, there is no drawback if you kill the boss faster. You don't suffer any penalty if you kill the boss in 4 minutes instead of killing it in 7, right? It's just better. However, the difference with healing is that healing is limited. There is only a limited amount of damage that the encounter can do. You can't out-heal the damage you're taking. If you're taking 200 million damage in a fight, you only need to heal 200 million damage. You can't physically heal more. What you're going to be doing is what is called overhealing. It's just useless healing that goes to waste because there is not enough damage to heal. Healers work based on the minimum viable product system that developers adhere to. So the idea is that you want to be able to complete, to produce as a product, a comp of healers or one healer that can heal just as much, just the same amount of damage that you are taking and no more. Because then you can use all the other damage increases, whether it is the tier sets, whether it is better trinkets, whether it is higher item level pieces on the gear, whether it is buffs from other players, from other specs, and you can use that on DPS players. Because all you need as a healer is to have a minimum viable product for the encounter. In this case, for Neltarion. All you need is to have the healers to be geared just enough that they can get by the damage that Neltarion does. Once they get by that, there is no need to continue to gear them. There is no need to continue to push them up, because what is going to matter more is if the DPS can do more damage. Is if the DPS can kill an ad fast enough, if they can transition the boss fast enough, for example, before he uses another round of dangerous abilities, if they can focus targets, ads, priority targets, etc., break some shields in time, etc. That becomes more important than healing. That is why, in general, healers are kept at an MVP minimum standard of gear, of power, of buffs, etc. Because what generally matters is for them to be just enough, just above the minimum of viability. Whereas when it comes to DPS, the higher you go, the better. The faster you kill, the better. So you have a much more tight importance, much more min-maxing with tools like simulations, tools like spreadsheets for multiple sets of numbers all over the place. You have entire sites like raid bots dedicated to trying to calculate with maximum precision how much damage you can gain, because it is more important in general than the more healing you can gain. Because, the moment you can heal Neltarion's abilities, what is getting more healing going to do for you? You already know you can get by Neltarion with the power you have right now. So it's not really going to matter that much more. It's going to make things easier. It's going to make things more manageable. It's going to cover for mistakes. It's going to cover for, bad play from you, the healer, or bad play from the DPS taking more damage than he should. But still, at the base level, you already know you can heal that damage. So you don't really need any more power. Whereas as a DPS, as we pointed out, it's always more valuable to get as much power as possible. So that is why, generally, you get to hear so much more importance being put on doing damage than doing healing. It's not because people hate healers, it's not because people don't put enough importance on healing or focus enough on healing. It is because it is known, it is a fact that when you have to split the powers amongst a group of people, whether it is 5 in Mythic Plus or 20 in a raid, you want to try to give just enough power to the healers that are enough to get by, that are enough to go through the key in Mythic Plus or the raid boss in the raid, and then focus the rest of the power on the DPS, because doing more damage is always more relevant. As well as, at times, encourage the healers to do more damage themselves as well, because damage is important. That is why we often hear these type of statements. Not because there is bias against healers, not because healers are underappreciated or undervalued by the rest of the player base. They might be. Some players might still undervalue them, but definitely not because healing is not important or not valuable. Just because the way the game is fleshed out, there is just more importance, there is just more value in doing more damage compared to just doing more healing. That is the informational point for today, trying to flesh things out a little bit as to why often we hear and talk and discuss about damage much more often than talking about healing. That is basically the TLDR of how things are going right now in competitive content, whether it is Mythic Plus or the raid. So, with this tidbit of info out of the way, I hope someone got enlightened by this discovery, and then we can leave each other to the rest of our weekend. So, we are thanking, as usual, first all of the Patreon supporters for the contribution and the help to the growth of the channel, which you can still do completely for free. You can like and comment down below to help with the YouTube algorithm, and then you can subscribe to the channel as well. With these things out of the way, thank you guys again for watching. See you guys soon, and in the meantime, to be fair, I don't mind this temperature, it's quite okay. I fear that as we enter August, there's gonna be a comeback.